To get started on this version of the project, you should have already downloaded the Rig Character Photoshop file. Inside of the Layers panel, if you open it in Photoshop, you can open up each of the subfolders and see that you've got all the different body and head parts already designed and ready to go. Each of the layers is appropriately named, so you can open these up and see what they look like and be able to manipulate those as needed. The next thing we need to do is to jump into Adobe Character Animator and let's establish a new project. We'll go up to File, down to New Project. You can give it a name. I'm going to call it Ben's New Character. And we need to import that puppet into our rig area. Make sure rig is selected. Go up to File, down to Import, and locate that new, there we are, Rig Character Photoshop file. When you say Import, this will bring in our rig character. We can then click on his name and drag it into the puppet area. And this will bring up our puppet to be able to work with. The next thing we need to do is to have a scene that he can live in. If you go up to Scene at the very top, we'll create a new scene. We can call this our test scene. And if you go over to the record mode, notice that I have my camera on over to the side. You can double click test scene. This will bring it up in our scene area. Then we can click on our rig character and let's drag him into our scene area to load him up. Since I have my camera on, you can see that he's starting to interact with my video as well as any movements that I have for my camera turned on. Now right now he only has one mouth position, just a neutral and just a neutral position. This is why his mouth is blinking on and off. The first thing we need to do is to rig up our character so that he can move around and move appropriately. Let's go back over to rig mode, and in your puppet area open up the body portion of this, and you can see we've got a left and a right arm as well as torso and hips. The first thing we need to do is to pin him down. At the very bottom of your screen, locate the Pen tool and select the hips layer. With the hips selected, you can click on the feet and you can pin them down and have them fixed in position. From here, now we can go to Record, and you can see that his body will move, but his feet will stay the same. Let's go back to our rig and better establish our body and our body setup. To do this, choose the Ben's character layer, and in the middle, underneath this little Lego looking block, this will add some behavior properties to it. Click on the plus sign and choose Body for it to recognize the body. Then we can click on the plus sign one more time and let's add Limb IK. This is the inverse kinematics that lets you move the limbs around naturally. Once again, if I go over to Record, it's not going to look like it does much, but now we can start to pin things and have them stay right where they need to be. Let's work on adding some structure to the arms. I'm going to zoom in and choose my right arm. With the arm selected, the first thing we need to do is to change the point of origin to his shoulder. Use your arrow selection tool, then click on the right arm and let's drag it up to where the shoulder needs to attach, right about there. The next thing we need to do is to add some bones to it. With the right arm selected, use your handle tool, which looks like a circle with a dot in the middle of it. Let's establish where the wrist is going to be by clicking here. Then we can click on the plus sign and click on this right wrist. In addition to having the right wrist selected, if you go over to your modifiers, you can make this one draggable, and this will allow us to move the arm around individually. With this tool, let's also establish right about where the elbow is going to be, which will be right here. Click on the plus sign and choose elbow. Now we're not going to do the shoulder just yet. Instead, let's add some bones in between both of these. Next to the handle tool is the stick tool, and with the stick tool we can click and drag in between both of these dots, and this will allow us to keep the arms nice and rigid. Finally, to add the shoulders, let's select the torso, and with the torso selected, let's choose our handle tool. Then we can zoom in, and right where it attaches here, we can apply a handle, in this case for the right shoulder. Now when we go into record mode, we should be able to move our body around. Notice his arm stays attached, and we can click on his arm and be able to move it around as well. Later on, we'll add the ability to have it track your body if you want to act out this way. Let's do the same thing for the left arm. Going back to our rig, we'll slide over. By the way, you can hold down the space bar and move things over if you need to. We'll choose our right arm. Excuse me, our left arm. Left arm is what we're working on. Let's use our arrow tool. Drag the point of origin for the left arm to be up here on the shoulder. Let's get our handle tool. Click once at the wrist, and let's tag this now as being the wrist. And also, with that one selected, let's make it draggable. There we go. Let's also add an elbow. And while we got the arm selected, let's choose our stick tool and draw between both of these. Now he's got rigid arms. Finally, select the torso, get your handle tool one more time, and click right where the shoulder should be and tag that shoulder. Now we can go in and do record, and you can move his arm around and place it where it needs to be. Again, if you don't have the limb IK turned on, this is going to stretch out your arms. Now if I do something like raise it all the way up, you can see how it starts to kind of break down just a little bit. For our acting, we're going to keep it nice and low and simple, and he's not going to go wild on all of his acting. The other thing you can do is if you go over to your camera and turn on the body tracking abilities, you can back up, and this should start to track out your arms and where they are. Now this is going to take a little bit of practice, and I'm not backed out all the way, but this will give you the ability to trace where your arms are, and he'll try to follow those around as best as possible. We're going to keep it simple. I'm going to turn that off, and I'm simply going to drag it where I need to right now. Finally, let's place the head and play around with the things that we can do for the head and also the mouth structure. We'll go back to rig, go back up here at the top. We'll close out body and choose head frontal. Now notice that I've got two different heads that are placed on here. We only need one head. So I'm going to select this one, the lowest one, and uncheck it. I'm actually going to delete it away. We'll use our move tool to click on the head. Let's place it down here. Let that be the origin placement for the head on this part. This is going to make it much easier to tilt your head and to move things around. So now it's moving a little bit more naturally. Instead of the center, it's being moved at the neck base. So if you have two heads, just get rid of one and work from there. The next thing we need to do is to play around with the mouth structure, and so that he can move his lips. Now, in the mouth, you've got a bunch of different visemes for each of the different characters or syllables that can be created. If we jump into Photoshop, you can open up the mouth structure, and you can see I've already got a few of the layers for each of these visemes, and the only one that's drawn off is the one for the neutral position. What we need to do is to draw a drawing of each of the mouths for each of the different visemes. Now if you go on the canvas page, you can find, let's see if I can find it. There we go. You can find this JPEG of all of the different standard mouth shapes and for each of the different drawings that we have. So we can use this as a guide, and you can draw it off however you wish for your design. So if I was to draw this, right now I've got just a neutral position. I can have a surprised and a smile position. So if I go here, I can find the layer for surprised. I'm going to zoom in so I can see the mouth. and use whichever tools you're most comfortable with. Now this doesn't have to be 100% perfect. I like to use the paintbrush tool, but if you're more comfortable using some of the vector drawing tools or other drawing tools, you're welcome to use those. As long as everything that you draw is in the same layer once you're finished. So with surprised selected, I'm going to turn off visibility for my neutral, and I'm simply going to draw a surprised face. Oops, let's make this a black color to keep it consistent with everything that we've got. And I'll fill this one in. So there's his surprised face. Let's do an face. So going on here, has it kind of more of a smile. You can show teeth and tongue if you want to. So with that selected, draw this in, fill it in. Let's do some teeth. And let's do, real quickly, a tongue inside there. So there's my I can do an L shape. You can see they're not in order, but there's the la, which is essentially the same as the ah. But we'll get this. Fill it in. Grab my brush. In this case, the L is, the tongue is touching the teeth, so we'll paint it up there. And we'll do the teeth la like that. So repeat this process until you have all of the visemes drawn off, one for each of the layers, and make sure each layer is spelled exactly as you see it on here. Now for the sake of time, I'm going to pause the video and jump ahead, and so when I'm finished, you'll see me finished up when working on all of these. All right, with this done, I can now close out my mouth folder. Let's go up to File and save our Photoshop document. And when I jump back into Character Animator, you can see it automatically updates, and I can even open up my mouth and see all the different visemes that are loaded here. Now by default, I only have the R showing, so that's why you see it, and the others are out. But if I click on each of the visemes, I should be able to go to my tag and see how it's automatically tagged over here on the side. Now to really test this, let's go to record mode. Got my camera turned on, as well as I've got my microphone turned on. Now, when I start to talk, you can see he's going to try to pick up on whatever he thinks is the appropriate syllable that he's listening to, which is pretty cool. So, you can play around with these and keep talking. For me, I'm going to turn off my microphone. Let's jump back into our rig and see if we can play around now with movement of his head. Going back into rig mode, notice that you have a layer called Head Frontal. And with it selected, if you go over to your tags area, you can see how it's got the entire head selected as well as the frontal view. We also need to establish a left and right quarter view of our head. Now to do this, we need to create a separate design for each of the different turns. So I'm going to jump back into Photoshop, and I'm going to go ahead and close out or finish up the head, frontal, and the body folders that we're working on. Now with this, I want to make a copy of the head frontal folder. You can do this easily by clicking on it and dragging it down to the new layer icon at the bottom of your layers. And you can see this will create a head frontal copy. Let's rename this one Head Left Quarter. Now this is going to allow him to turn a quarter turn to the left. I'm going to turn off visibility for my head frontal view, and let's just open up and work on this quarter turn view. To have him look to the left-hand side, we need to shift everything over. Use your Move tool, the arrow tool at the top of your toolbox, and let's take this one layer at a time. I'm going to choose my left and right eyes, and then simply shift them over. Now keep in mind, when you do this, they both don't just simply shift over. One goes over a little bit farther than the other. So I'm going to move them over and get them a little bit closer right there. Once my eyes are established, I can then choose my eyebrows and move them over, as well as my nose. Let's center it up, maybe move it up just a little bit, and even my entire mouth. I am using my arrow keys just to make it a little bit easier to manipulate it, but that's okay if you want to use your mouse to be able to move it too. Now, as far as his ears go, this left ear needs to go back some and this right ear needs to be pulled forward. So locate your ears. The right ear, the one on this side, his left, needs to be pulled back in, while the left ear, the one on this side, needs to be on top of the head base. So I'm going to select it and drag it above the head base. I'm going to move it over so it looks like it's moved to this position. The final thing you can do is adjust his hair accordingly too, because as his hair moves, his head moves, you also want his hair to move too. Now you can either erase or redraw different parts of it. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I'm going to select the hair layer. I'm going to use my transform tool. Go up to edit, down to transform, and I'm going to simply distort it. With distort, I can click on his hair and drag it over. Maybe this part moves in just a bit. And have it reposition over here. So now it's moved in and changes around as his face moves. I'm going to move his eyebrows up just a little bit more, make it look good. Now when I zoom out, I've got a left quarter turn. Let's do the same thing for a right quarter turn. So with the head frontal selected, I'm going to drag it down to my new layer to create a copy of it. Then I'm going to rename this one right quarter. Hit return on that too. Now, so we can see it, let's turn off visibility for our left quarter and turn on visibility for our right quarter. And we can open it up and work with each part. We'll zoom into it. Take it one part at a time. I'm going to choose my eyes and move them over. It's my right eye and my left eye. Then we can choose our nose and get it centered up. And our eyebrows, make those over there too. That's looking good. Finally, our mouth needs to be underneath our nose. And then we can do the same for the ears. Open up your ear. Your left ear needs to be pulled back in a little bit, and this time the right ear needs to be on top of the head's base, and we can move it inward. And then finally you can select the hair, and let's manipulate it, or you can get your paintbrush tool and redraw it. But all I'm going to do is go up to edit, transform, and distort. And I'm simply going to distort it so that it's kind of moved around and pushed back some on this side. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. We just want it to look different as he turns his head. All right, with this done, let's close everything up. I'm going to turn back on my head frontal as my default view, and I'm going to save my Photoshop file. Let's jump back into Character Animator, and notice now I've got 3 different heads to work with. In order to get Character Animator to recognize each of the heads, we need to group them together. So I'm going to hold down my Shift key as I select all 3 of the heads. If you go up to Puppet, choose Group Layers, and then finally we're going to right-click on it, and let's rename that group Head. So now we have a body and a head, and inside of the head we've got the different quarter views. If we click on Head Left Quarter, notice now the head is selected and it automatically recognizes that as a left quarter. We also have the right quarter and the frontal nice and tagged appropriately down here as well. The last thing we need to do is to turn on our property that lets it recognize head turning. So once again, with your Ben's character properties selected, we're going to turn on Head and Body Turner. Now when we go into record mode, We can turn our head, and you can see how it starts to recognize the head that we're working with as well. So I can move it around and have him look around with it as well. Now, one thing to notice when I start to move my face around is that the eyes are kind of warping and distorting improperly. Let's see if we can fix this up. If you go back into rig mode, we'll select our character, and I've got my frontal head turned on. So with that one selected and also visible, I'm going to open it up, and I'm going to choose my right eye, and let's make it an independent eye. Then I can choose my left eye and make it independent as well. Now let's jump back into record mode, and you can see that the eyes are acting much more appropriately this time as well. Also, while we're here, let's see if we can fix the rigging of his character. I'm going to turn on the full body tracker. Then we can go down to the, let's see if I can get my thing right, there we go. Open up the body options, and then we can open the track handles. Right now it's tracking my head and my left and right wrist. We also want it to track our left shoulder, so I'm going to turn that on, and our left elbow, and our right shoulder, and our right elbow. Now when I back up, I may have to recalibrate, so I'm going to back up just a little bit more from here, click the calibrate button. You can see how it distorts. But now it should track my shoulders, my elbows, and my full arms, as well as my head turning, and if I have my microphone on, it will track my lips as well. So this is what we want to use for our performance. Again, you may have to click calibrate to recalibrate this just to test it out. There we go, and to see what he looks like. Now he's acting much nicer, and I can reach up and he's following along with my body much better. The final thing we need to do now is to add the audio into our design. Let's go back to our rig, make sure everything is okay. I'm going to close out my frontal head. Let's import your poem by going up to File, down to Import, and you should have downloaded one of the poems from the class page. In my case, I've got it in my Downloads folder, and I've chosen A Psalm of Life. We'll click Import, and this will add it to your project portion of your rig. Click on the Record mode, and let's drag the poem from the project down into the timeline. You can see how we can see the audio waveform down here. Select this waveform, then go up to your timeline and down to Compute Lip Sync Take from Scene Audio. This will take just a few seconds to run through, but it's going to locate the correct viseme for the audio that's being shown. Once it's done, you can click the play button and you can test it out.
A Psalm of Life. Tell me not in mournful numbers.
For the sake of time, I'm not going to play through the entire thing. The last thing we need to do is record your performance of the play as he's going through it. Now, for all you have to do for the project grade is to show your character moving around, specifically his arms, rotating the head side to side, looking around, and also blinking. In other words, show me that your character can perform all the things that we've rigged. I'm going to back this up. This may take a little bit of practice, and if you need to, you can do it multiple times, but when you're ready, you can click the record button underneath your stage area. I'm going to set up my document by clicking calibrate and backing up. So now you can see me, and I can move around, and I can move my head side to side. Once I'm ready, I can click record.
A Psalm of Life. Tell me not in mournful numbers, life is but an empty dream. For the soul is death that slumbers, and things are not what they seem. Life is real, life is earnest, and the grave is not his goal. Dust thou art, to dust returnest, was not spoken of the soul. Not enjoyment and not sorrow is our destined end or way, but to act to each tomorrow finds us farther than today. Art is long and time is fleeting, and our hearts, though stout and brave, still like muffled drums are beating funeral marches to the grave. In the world's broad field of battle, in the bivouac of life, be not like dung, driven cattle, be a hero in the strife. Trust in your future, how it...
I'm going to stop it right there so you can see and give you the idea of how it will act. It may not be 100% perfect. If you need to redo it again, you can always go up to Edit, and you can undo Compute Lip Sync or undo all the things that are done and retake whatever acting that you want to add to your design. Once you're finished, the final thing we need to do is to export your video. You can go up to File, down to Export, and choose Quick Export. Now by default, it's going to want to save it inside of a hidden folder that's deep inside of your documents. Make sure to click on this folder and choose your desktop or your folder where you know where it's saved to. In my case, I'm going to choose my desktop by clicking on the arrow. Oops, excuse me, there we go. Choose the arrow and give the file your name. This will save it as an MP4. You can click Save and then finally Export. It'll take a couple of minutes to render depending on the poem that you chose, but once it's finished, this MP4 is what you're going to upload to the class Canvas page. After that, you're completely done. All that you need to turn in for this project is the MP4 and also your rough sketch or initial sketch of your final character's design, even if it wasn't the one that we used for this character's rig.